I said recently the Pittsburgh Steelers were the McDonald's of the NFL. And I think I had a lot of evidence to back that up. McDonald's was the trailblazer of fast food. The Pittsburgh Steelers once were a dynasty. It seemed like they were the trailblazers of the NFL. I think the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers both have an argument for that title, but the Steelers, decades ago, they were right there. They had as much of a claim to that title as anyone, you know? But here's the thing. When it comes to Mike Tomlin specifically, let's just talk about right here, right now in Pittsburgh. Heading into 2024 and probably beyond, honestly, the Pittsburgh Steelers have peaked with Mike Tomlin as their head coach. And it's not Mike Tomlin's fault. It's more so just due to the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think that their best days are behind them. And sometimes you're never going to repeat all-time great level success. It's hard to be a dynasty. It's hard to be, an all-decade team, but the Steelers, they were a team that was kind of at that point, long, long ago, well over a decade ago, they were winning Super Bowls. But now it just seems like they're arguably the fourth best team in their division. The division is slowly but surely catching up to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are not one of the more elite organizations right here, right now, at least in 2024. Kansas City, San Francisco, Philadelphia, the Rams, there's multiple teams I would have ahead of the Steelers in terms of, my trust in them competing for a Super Bowl. And it just seems like Mike Tomlin is one of the only things keeping the Pittsburgh Steelers a relevant franchise. I mean, seriously, people, I don't think that that's really even up for debate. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been a playoff team of recent with very, very big questions at quarterback. A defense that's had injuries, a lot of moving parts on the offensive line. These have not been all-time great rosters that the Steelers have had. Mike Tomlin has not been given the best rosters to work with. Now, is part of that his fault? Yeah, some of that is his fault because he does have a say as the head coach in personnel decisions. But I just think Mike Tomlin is elevating the Steelers' brand a lot more than the Steelers are elevating his brand. I think that the roles have kind of reversed. When Mike Tomlin first got with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he was a great coach, but he was young, and he really benefited from having a Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger that he could rely on to kind of be the CEO of the football team at times when maybe he wasn't able to be the CEO of the football team the way he wanted to, even though Big Ben Roethlisberger has some question marks in terms of his leadership, But you had guys like Troy Polamalu, Ike Taylor, Hines Ward on your team. There were other guys and other players in that organization that could help lift a young Mike Tomlin up. But now it just seems like a lot of those Hall of Fame players are gone, and Tomlin has evolved. And honestly, nothing's really changed about Tomlin other than the fact that he's evolved every single year and gotten better. The problem is he don't got as good of players anymore. What's the difference between Mike Tomlin and Andy Reid and Sean McVay right now? You can talk about some of Mike Tomlin's flaws, and there are some flaws when it comes to Mike Tomlin, but let's be for real, people. If you give Mike Tomlin a Patrick Mahomes to work with, you mean to tell me that guy is not at least getting to a Super Bowl? Come on, people. Wrap your brains around this. Mike Tomlin got to the playoffs with Mason Rudolph as his best quarterback this past year. He's led a team with Duck Hodges as a starting quarterback. When it comes to Mike Tomlin staying in one place is damaging his reputation slowly but surely. Because everyone's saying, Mike Tomlin, every time he gets to the playoffs, he's getting bounced out in the first round. Folks, the argument can be made the Pittsburgh Steelers shouldn't even be in the playoffs in the first place. I mean, in that division, with those rosters, the fact that Tomlin has had the likes of Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph to work with of recent, a Ben Roethlisberger that we'd all know and love and respect, but was on the later stages of his career, could barely move outside the pocket, was just a statue, a dink and dunk guy, Hall of Famer, no doubt about it, but well past his prime. That's impressive in itself. And I just think Mike Tomlin's relationship with the Pittsburgh Steelers is no longer a balanced relationship. Because in the beginning and even the middle stages of the relationship, both were hot commodities. The Steelers were a hot commodity because they were a franchise that was well loved and well respected by universally everyone. And I'm not saying the respect has gone away from the Steelers, but in terms of just expectations to actually compete for a championship, those expectations aren't really there right now because the Steelers, they don't have a dynamic quarterback. And yes, they have some nice, shiny tools on defense and offense, but a lot of teams have some nice, shiny tools and pieces on offense and defense. I mean, look at the Chicago Bears. Montez Sweat, star pass rusher. DJ Moore, star receiver. The NFL is loaded with talent. What separates a lot of these teams is the organizations that are drafting. A lot of guys, in the front office that can win on not just day number 1, but day 2 and 3 of the draft and find those hidden gems, but also head coach and quarterback. Right now, the front offices that find hidden gems and draft well in terms of quarterback and seek out the best coaching staffs and head coach, those are the teams that are winning. So I think Mike Tomlin staying in one destination is ruining his reputation to a certain degree because people are wondering, why is Mike Tomlin not winning playoff games? Have you seen his quarterback? Have you seen the roster that he's had to work with? I'm not saying it's terrible, but compared to some of the other head coaches that are on Mike Tomlin's level, he's been at a disadvantage. And I think that Mike Tomlin could benefit from a fresh start. And maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers could benefit from a fresh start from Mike Tomlin. But that's just me reporting. I want to know what you guys have to say, but I feel very, very strongly about this opinion. And I want to keep talking about Mike Tomlin right here, right now, because again, Mike Tomlin has not won a playoff game since 2016. And here's the thing. Steelers fans keep telling me how great Mike Tomlin is. I understand why. But Pittsburgh Steelers fans need to make up their mind when it comes to Mike Tomlin. Because the reality is, whether you like it or not, if Andy Reid or Bill Belichick went through a stretch of 8 straight years, and that's where Mike Tomlin is at right now, 8 straight years without winning a playoff game in the National Football League, they would be getting crucified, people. And it just seems like Tomlin keeps getting a pass. Here's the thing, people. Pittsburgh Steelers fans and the NFL media, they need to choose one side or the other. Maybe you want to play it on the safe side and you don't really care. For me personally, I think you need to choose a side because when we talk about Mike Tomlin's legacy, what is his legacy? Is he overrated? Is he underrated? Properly rated? Here's the thing, people. Either Mike Tomlin isn't as good as you Pittsburgh Steelers fans claim him to be, or Mike Tomlin is elevating a roster and a brand that has massively fallen off since the days he won a Super Bowl, which was over a decade ago. I believe that is the case. That is the truth right now in Pittsburgh. That Mike Tomlin is elevating a brand that was once all-time great that has shrunken down a few levels. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're not at the kids' table. They're still at the big boy table, but they're not the CEO of the big boy table. They're no longer the manager of the restaurant. They're just a very, very good, well-respected organization that was once great, that everyone respects, but right here, right now, we don't take them seriously in terms of winning Super Bowls. And that could change down the road. But, until the Pittsburgh Steelers get a star quarterback, I don't think they have much hope. In a division with Lamar Jackson, in a division with Joe Burrow, potentially Deshaun Watson coming back and having a resurgence, a great Cleveland Browns defense, I don't see the path for the Steelers. I really flatly don't. And this is one of the reasons why I believed Mike Tomlin should have left the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason, because I feel like Tomlin it was the perfect time for him to leave. 8 straight years without winning a playoff game in Pittsburgh, you've done all you can do. You've elevated the brand to an extended level of status, because I don't think the Steelers are surprising anyone this upcoming season. If they win 7, 8, 9 games and barely make the playoffs and get bounced in the first round, Mike Tomlin would have had an opportunity to coach a guy like Justin Herbert. Now, the Chargers organization, they have some questions. They need to prove they can have their buttons up, but I felt it was a good situation for Tomlin where he could really showcase how great of a head coach he is in a very, very good division where all the microscopes would be on him. I mean, I love Ben Roethlisberger. I think Ben Roethlisberger is arguably one of the 15 greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game of football, at least just definitely from a talent perspective. And when you throw in his accomplishments and statistics, then I think he's right there as well. The one knock on Ben Roethlisberger was lack of commitment in the offseason sometimes. And I'm not saying Justin Herbert is ever going to reach Ben Roethlisberger status or even Hall of Fame status, even though that is very, very possible because Justin Herbert is wildly talented. But Herbert, up to this point, has proven to be a more committed NFL player to his craft compared to a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, who in the offseason loved to drink his beers and play golf. He wasn't a, rah-rah, always 24/7 in the film room guy like Tom Brady. Wasn't as dedicated to his diet and his nutrition like a Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, and that's fine. That's what worked for Ben Roethlisberger, and for what it's worth, he won 2 Super Bowls, and he's going to make the NFL Hall of Fame. Ben Roethlisberger did just fine, made millions of dollars, but when you're working with highly, highly committed people, it elevates you. And I'm not saying Roethlisberger didn't elevate Tomlin. I'm just saying Roethlisberger and Herbert are 2 different quarterbacks, but both wildly, wildly talented. And Herbert could have been a guy that Tomlin really got on track in terms of winning. We know about Justin Herbert's talent, but is he going to win? He hasn't won a lot in the National Football League. A lot of that has been due to the fact that he hasn't had the right head coach by his side. And I think Tomlin could have been the guy. So I think that was a missed opportunity. But people have to make up their mind about how they view Mike Tomlin. Is Mike Tomlin overrated or underrated? Let me know what you guys think, because I would love to really, really know what you guys have to say. And I'm going to drive this point home one more last time. Mike Tomlin should leave the Pittsburgh Steelers at some point. Very, very soon. What are the Steelers without Mike Tomlin? I don't think the Steelers are a Super Bowl caliber team anymore if Mike Tomlin is gone. And you could say, oh, the Steelers, they're a well-run organization. They're a great brand. They'll find a new great head coach. Keep in mind, people, the Dallas Cowboys, ever since Jimmy Johnson was kicked out of town, they have not even been to a conference championship since then. Like, think about that, people. They haven't been to a conference championship. Forget Super Bowl. They haven't even reached a conference championship since Jimmy Johnson was kicked out the building. The Jaguars have in the past 25 years. The Detroit freaking Lions have made it to a conference championship, and yet the Dallas Cowboys haven't, despite having all these great Pro Bowl players, even good quarterbacks at times. Tony Romo was a good quarterback. Dak Prescott, darn good quarterback, but not even a conference championship appearance to show for it. Mike Tomlin's peaked in Pittsburgh. It's the same story every single year. 7 wins is their floor. 9 is probably the max. 9 or 10, 11 wins is going to be the max because they're limited at quarterback, and probably a first-round exit, no more than potentially winning a playoff game. They're no longer in that Patriots when Brady and Belichick were there. They're no longer, in that Packers when Rodgers was there. They're no longer in that category. They're no longer in those categories where consistently year in and year out, you expected the Steelers to potentially win their division and potentially make a deep playoff run. I think that's out of the question right now. They don't have the quarterback. And I think the roster is a tad bit overrated, and management kind of a little bit stubborn. Mike Tomlin is too good of a head coach, too talented of a head coach to be a part of the same exact story every single year. It seems like the Pittsburgh Steelers over the past 8 years have been the same exact story every single year. Where Mike Tomlin is elevating kind of a middle of the pack, middle of the road roster with a couple of key star players. But in the end, he doesn't have as talented of rosters as a Sean McVay, like Andy Reid has. Imagine if Mike Tomlin had a Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he won a Super Bowl with Ben Roethlisberger. Why can't he win a Super Bowl with potentially a Josh Allen or a Joe Burrow or a Patrick Mahomes? I think that we would definitely be underselling Mike Tomlin to say, yeah, Mike Tomlin can't win a Super Bowl with that. Like, hello, people. I think you're kind of a little bit over your skis if you disagree with me. if Mike Tomlin leaves the Steelers and wins games and goes on deep playoff runs with a different franchise, that will elevate Mike Tomlin's brand. Because even the people that are high on him, there are still some people that are saying, yeah, but Mike Tomlin's a little bit of a product of the Pittsburgh Steelers organization and the Pittsburgh Steelers brand. Because the Pittsburgh Steelers were winning Super Bowls a long time ago, even before Mike Tomlin got there. But I think the Steelers are in a transition stage where they're not an all-time great dynasty anymore. And they're probably not going to find the next Terry Bradshaw or the next Ben Roethlisberger, even as good as Caleb Williams is coming out of USC. If the Steelers were to trade for him, is the likelihood of Caleb Williams being Ben Roethlisberger or Terry Bradshaw, in terms of their success in their career, is it likely? I'm going to swing on the fence of no, it's not likely, because those are guys that come around once every lifetime, and sometimes they get a little bit lucky. Roethlisberger landed in a great situation, was an ultra-talented quarterback, coming out of Miami of Ohio, who a lot of people, for whatever reason, had questions about. I really don't understand why. I know he played at a smaller school, but I mean, a guy that's 6'5", has a cannon for an arm and can move around and make plays. I mean, and is big and strong. That's a guy that can't work in the NFL. I think that's kind of a misevaluation by a lot of NFL teams. In most years, Roethlisberger would be the number one overall pick in his draft class. I mean, look at Josh Allen. Josh Allen got drafted pretty high coming out of Wyoming, So maybe I'm, speaking on terms that don't make sense, but I think they make sense, But, yeah, I mean, Tomlin winning without the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are one of the 5 best football organizations of all time, they will probably be that way for forever, because the Steelers are the McDonald's of the NFL. Like, McDonald's, whether they fall off or not the next 25 to 30 years, they're forever cemented in history because they were a trailblazer of the fast food industry, just like the Pittsburgh Steelers, a trailblazer of the National Football League in terms of an NFL franchise. But that's how I feel about Mike Tomlin. I think he can really elevate his brand. I think he's already a Hall of Fame NFL head coach, but he'd be in that no doubt about it category if he were to go on deep playoff runs and win a Super Bowl with another team. That's how I feel.